A poor maid walks into a billionaire's mansion, only to find a photo of her dead daughter on his desk. But when his teenage son reveals the truth, it unleashes a secret that will leave you speechless. What happens next will change everything. Stay till the end. This story will break you, then heal you. Before we begin this powerful story, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our emotionally rich, life-changing content. Like and share the channel to support our growing community. This is more than just storytelling. Each episode carries a deep moral lesson designed to inspire, uplift, and transform. Let's grow, heal, and learn together. Maid found photo of her daughter in Millionaire's mansion. What his son revealed left her in tears. I used to believe that money solved everything. That if I worked hard enough, earned enough, built enough, I would never feel empty again. But the truth is, success built on broken pieces always leaves sharp edges behind. My name is Alexander Quinn, 42 years old, founder of one of the largest tech firms on the East Coast. A billionaire on paper. But back then, I was just a man. Alone in a mansion filled with silence. No laughter. No warmth. Only walls dressed in art I never looked at. And windows that framed a world I no longer felt part of. Then came her. Her name was Clara. She arrived quietly, like morning light slipping through curtains. Assigned by the agency as my housemaid. Late 30s. Wore her brown hair tied back in a plain bun. Moved like someone carrying invisible burdens. She never spoke unless spoken to. But there was something about her. Something too still. Too composed, like a person who had seen too much. Weeks passed. She kept everything in place. Except my heart. That, she began to stir, unintentionally. One evening, I came home early from a board meeting. I heard soft sobs coming from the hallway. Curious, I followed the sound. Clara stood frozen in my study. Her hands trembled as she held a photo frame from my desk. I did not remember putting that photo there. It was a picture of a little girl. 5, maybe 6. Big almond eyes, curly dark hair, a sunflower dress. Clara's knees buckled. She whispered, "Where did you get this photo?" I told her the truth. I did not know. My son, Lucas, now 17, had once kept a few childhood memories scattered around the house. I assumed it was his. Clara's face drained of color. She clutched the photo to her chest. And said words that shattered the air. "This is my daughter. But she died 5 years ago." The room fell silent. I could hear the ticking of the clock behind me. Each second, heavier than the last. I stared at her, trying to understand. Then, without warning, Lucas entered. He saw the frame. Saw Clara. He froze. And then, tears filled his eyes. I knew her, he said, his voice trembling. Clara turned to him. "What do you mean?" Lucas walked over slowly, his gaze locked on the photo. I met her at the hospital. I was 11. She was in the cancer ward. I was getting my knee surgery, and we shared the same floor. She gave me this photo and said, "If anything happens to me, please keep me alive in someone's heart." Clara collapsed to her knees. Lucas bent down beside her. "She used to talk about you every day. About how you braided her hair. How you called her your sunflower. She made me promise that I would always remember her smile." Clara wept like the world had opened beneath her. I stood still, helpless, ashamed that I had never noticed what that photo meant. Lucas placed the picture in her hands, gently. "I kept her secret," he said. "I never knew your name, until now." I looked at Clara. This woman who had scrubbed my floors, folded my shirts, and carried a grief so quietly. And I realized. She had more strength than any CEO I had ever met. She rose, eyes still wet, but gaze steady. "I thought I lost everything," she said. "But today, I found a piece of her soul." And in that moment, something shifted inside me. The mansion felt different. Lighter. Clara's pain had filled the halls with something more real than any wealth I had ever owned. And I had never admired anyone more. That night, I could not sleep. I walked the marble halls of my mansion. But they no longer echoed the same way. Her daughter's smile, now forever frozen in a photograph, haunted my thoughts. And Clara's face, the way her grief poured out, without pride, without shame, it did something to me. The next morning, I made coffee for the first time in years. Clara entered the kitchen, surprised. She apologized for the night before, as if pain needed permission. I told her not to. She looked at me, hesitant. Most men like you would have fired me. I looked her in the eye. Most men like me do not deserve the kindness you bring to this house. She tried to smile. That was the first morning I saw her not as an employee, but as a woman who had survived loss, who had continued working, who had loved more deeply than I knew was possible. Over the weeks, something changed between us. Not romantic, not rushed, but sacred. She told me stories of her daughter. How she danced barefoot in the rain. How she once tried to bake cookies and ended up burning half the kitchen. I listened, because no one else had. Lucas started spending more time with Clara too. He seemed calmer, more grounded. One evening, as I came home from a conference, I saw them both in the garden. Lucas was holding an old camera, showing Clara how to adjust the focus. They laughed. It was the sound I did not know I was missing. That night at dinner, Lucas turned to me. She reminds me of Mom. I flinched. He rarely spoke of her. My late wife, Emma, died in a car accident 12 years ago. And I had buried her memory under layers of work, meetings, acquisitions, and hollow success. Lucas continued. Not because she looks like her, but because she listens. Like Mom used to. I swallowed hard. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, hands clasped, and asked myself, what kind of man had I become? I had built an empire, but somewhere along the way, I had forgotten how to feel. And then Clara entered my life, with her quiet grace, and a daughter's memory tucked into her soul. I remembered what it meant to care again, to be human. Weeks turned to months. I asked Clara if she would stay permanently, not as a maid, but as part of our home. She hesitated, then said something I will never forget. Only if I can still scrub the floors when my heart feels heavy. And I nodded, because I understood. Grief does not ask for permission. It shows up in silence. And sometimes, it just wants to clean. But then, one morning, Clara did not come downstairs. The tea tray sat untouched. The radio she played while folding laundry remained silent. Lucas knocked on her door. No answer. We found her sitting on the floor by the window, the photo of her daughter pressed to her chest. Tears fell, but her eyes stared far away. She whispered, "She came in my dream last night. She told me she was proud of me." And then Clara said something that shook me. She also told me to tell you. You are the reason she smiled in her final days. I stared at her. What do you mean? Clara looked at me, and her next words unraveled everything I thought I knew. Because you were the man who saved her life once before. I felt my breath catch. Her words hung in the air like a sudden wind. Unseen, but undeniable. I saved her. Clara nodded slowly, a storm brewing behind her eyes. She reached into her worn leather bag, pulled out a faded newspaper clipping, and handed it to me with shaking fingers. My eyes scanned the headline. Local tech entrepreneur funds life-saving treatments for children's cancer ward. It was from a charity gala 8 years ago. Back when I still believed throwing money at pain could erase it. Back when I gave out checks but never stuck around long enough to see the faces behind the need. Clara pointed to a name at the bottom of the article. The hospital. The exact floor. The exact date. My daughter was there that night, she said, voice barely above a whisper. The doctors told me we would have to stop treatment. That we had no more funds. Until you made a donation that paid for 10 more rounds of chemo. I stood motionless. My mind tried to catch up. She lived another 6 months because of you, Clara continued.
She smiled. She danced.
She became friends with Lucas. And she died knowing the world could be kind. Tears welled up in my eyes. All these years, I had never known. The money I thought was meaningless was her miracle. But the twist came with its own weight. She wrote you a letter, Clara said, pulling a small, wrinkled envelope from the same bag. She told me to give it to the man in the black suit with tired eyes. I never understood what that meant, until I saw you standing alone in your own house. I took the letter, hands trembling. I opened it. Inside was a child's handwriting, slightly crooked, with hearts dotting the I's. Dear Mr. Thank you for helping me be brave. When I grow up, I want to help people like you do. Even if I do not grow up, please remember, you made one little girl believe in heroes. Love, Sunflower. My knees gave way. I dropped to the floor. I wept. For the girl I never met. For the love I never earned. For the man I had become. And the one I was now learning to be. Clara sat beside me, not saying a word. Because silence, too, can heal. Lucas entered the room, paused at the sight of us, and without asking, joined us on the floor. 3 souls, bound by a memory, by a loss, by a miracle. Later that evening, I walked out to the garden. The sun had begun to set, painting the sky in amber and rose. I could almost hear a small girl's laughter in the wind. And I finally understood. Success is not measured by what you build, but by the lives you hold together, when the world tries to pull them apart. But that night, as the stars emerged, Clara shared one final truth. One that would change everything again. She said, I never told you who her father was. I turned slowly. Clara's eyes were wide, brimming, unspoken truths trembling on her lips. And what she revealed next turned my heart inside out. My heart thudded in my chest. Her words pierced deeper than any silence ever could. I never told you who her father was. I stared at her. My throat tightened. Clara's hands fidgeted in her lap, the way a person's hands do when they carry years of withheld truth. Then, barely above a whisper, she said it. It was you, Alexander. The earth seemed to shift under me. Everything in me froze. Time, breath, memory. I blinked. Me. Clara nodded slowly, painfully. I never wanted to destroy your life, she said. I never came here to seek revenge or pity. I just wanted to work. To survive. I sat in stunned silence. Thoughts collided like thunder inside my skull. Clara's eyes searched mine. It was a brief summer years ago. You had just launched your second startup. I was cleaning offices at night, putting myself through nursing school. We met once. Only once. But I remembered everything. Your laugh. Your eyes. Your kindness. My mind reached back into the fog of that time. I remembered sleepless nights. Late hours at the office. The exhaustion. The loneliness. And yes, one night. A quiet janitor with soft brown eyes and a shy smile. I had buried that memory. Tossed it into the pile of forgotten moments. But now, it roared back like a forgotten melody. Clara wiped her eyes. When I found out I was pregnant, I tried to reach you. I wrote letters. I called the company. But by then, you had vanished into success. I felt sick. My empire had risen. On bricks of neglect I never knew I laid. I raised her alone, she continued. Worked 2 jobs. Held her hand through every chemo session. And when she passed, I buried her with nothing but a photograph and a promise. Her voice broke. That if I ever saw you again, I would not ask for anything. Only that you know she existed. That she loved you, even if you never knew her. I reached out slowly, hands shaking. She did not pull away. I held her hand in mine. The weight of years, of missed birthdays, of silent milestones. It crushed me. Clara, I said, barely holding my voice steady. I failed you. I failed her.
She shook her head. No.
You gave her 6 more months.
You gave her hope.
You gave her a best friend in your son. And then, as if the universe was still unraveling, Lucas stepped into the doorway. He had heard everything.
He stood frozen, eyes wide, mouth slightly open.
Clara turned to him, heart in her throat.
Lucas. He looked at me,
then back at her. Does that mean she was my sister?
Clara nodded. Tears filled his eyes.
He clutched the photo to his chest.
And then,
he did something I will never forget.
He walked over,
knelt beside Clara,
and hugged her like a son
who had just found something he never knew he lost.
And for the first time in my life, I felt whole.
Not because of the money,
not because of the house,
but because in that moment, we were a family.
A broken one, a stitched one, but a real one. Still,
Clara had one more truth to share. One that would test everything I thought I had rebuilt. She looked me in the eyes and said, "There is something else I never told you. Something about her final wish." The air grew still again. Even the walls seemed to lean in. Clara's voice trembled, but her gaze held firm. She made me promise something. Lucas sat beside her, still holding the photo close. I remained frozen, every muscle braced. Clara reached into her bag one final time. This time, she pulled out a folded sheet of pink paper.
It was childlike, edges worn.
The ink faded by time and touch. She unfolded it carefully and held it out to me. I took it with reverence. It was another letter. But this time, it was not just gratitude. It was a wish. Written in large, uneven handwriting.
Dear Mommy,
if I have to go away, I want you to be happy. I want you to smile again. Promise me you will not stay alone. Maybe you can be with the nice man who helped all the kids. I think he needs a smile too. Tell Lucas he can call me sis whenever he wants. Love you forever.
Your Sunflower.
My hands shook. The words blurred as my eyes filled. It was not just a letter. It was a bridge.
From her heart to ours.
From her short life to everything yet to come. Clara pressed her hands to her mouth, trying not to break. Lucas leaned his head against her shoulder. I stood, walked to the window, and let the evening light wash over me.
The man I had been.
The one obsessed with growth, dominance, power. He no longer belonged here. There was no empire more important than the one we build between the people who love us.
I turned around.
Clara looked up at me through tear-filled eyes. I do not expect anything, Alexander, she said softly. She was my world. And you already gave her one miracle. I walked over, sat beside her on the floor. I want to give her another. Clara frowned, confused. I placed my hand over the pink letter. I want to honor her wish.
Her lips parted. You mean?
I mean I want us to be a family, Clara.
Not because of guilt. Not because of pity.
But because in a world full of noise, you and your daughter taught me how to hear again.
Lucas nodded.
She would have loved that.
And then,
for the first time in years, I smiled without weight on my chest. But life is never finished when you think you are finally whole. 3 days later, as we were preparing dinner together, Clara received a phone call.
She stepped into the hallway. When she returned, her face was pale, hands trembling.
What is wrong? I asked, moving toward her.
She clutched the phone.
It was the hospital.
Lucas stood up, alarmed. What happened?
Clara looked at both of us, voice cracking. They found something in her old samples. Something the doctors missed. Something that might change everything. And in that moment, the ground beneath us shifted again. This time, toward a past we thought was buried. And a future we could never have imagined. Clara's hands were shaking. I reached out instinctively, guiding her to sit. Lucas hovered beside her, his face pale. She whispered again, almost to herself. They said they need to see me.
In person. Immediately.
What did they find?
I asked, voice tight. Clara looked at me, her lips trembling.
They did a routine audit of long-term pediatric cases. They reran archived biopsy results using updated technology.
And they believe
there may have been a misdiagnosis.
The room tilted. Misdiagnosis?
My mind could barely grasp the word. Clara stared at the floor, stunned. They are not sure yet. But there is a possibility.
Her voice cracked. Lucas leaned forward.
A possibility of what?
She looked at both of us.
Eyes wide wet. Heart lodged in her throat. A possibility that she might have lived. That she might still be alive. Silence exploded in the room.
No one breathed. No one moved. The world seemed to pause.
As that impossible, aching hope flooded our hearts. I sat down slowly, every bone in my body heavy with disbelief. Clara gripped the letter in her hands, pressing it to her chest like it was her daughter's heartbeat.
But how?
I finally asked. They had records.
A death certificate. A burial. Clara nodded, dazed.
That is what I need to understand. They are checking for a potential identity switch. A mix-up during palliative care. They said it is rare. But not impossible. Lucas stared at the photo on the table. His voice was barely a whisper. If she is alive, she would be around 12 now. Clara buried her face in her hands, sobbing with a strange mix of agony and hope. I moved beside her, placing my hand on her back.
We are going to the hospital, I said firmly. Now. Tonight. I will take you myself.
She nodded without a word, too overwhelmed to respond.
Lucas looked at me.
I want to come too.
And for once, I did not see a teenager.
I saw a brother, aching for a second chance. We left the mansion behind. The same mansion that once echoed with silence was now filled with quiet prayers. The city lights blurred as we drove through the night. I could feel Clara beside me, her fingers gripping the letter, her lips moving in silent whispers.
Her hope, so raw, so fragile. It terrified me.
We arrived at the hospital just past midnight. The corridors were dim, the air sterile, yet charged. A woman in a lab coat met us at the front desk. She led us through winding halls, past sleeping patients and tired nurses. Finally, we reached a private room.
She turned to Clara.
Her expression was careful,
gentle. Are you ready? Clara nodded.
But her legs almost gave out. I caught her elbow. Lucas stood on her other side. The doctor opened the door. Inside, a young girl sat on a hospital bed.
Dark curly hair. Big almond eyes.
She turned her head at the sound.
Clara gasped, dropped the letter, and took one step forward.
Before the girl whispered,
"Mommy."
The moment the word mommy left her lips, Clara fell to her knees. Tears poured down her face. As she crawled to the side of the bed, like a mother who had been reborn, the little girl leaned forward, wrapping her arms around Clara's neck.
And in that instant, time folded in on itself.
Years of grief,
loneliness, unanswered prayers,
all came undone in that one embrace. I stood at the doorway, frozen. Lucas beside me, his hands trembling. She remembers her, he whispered. The doctor quietly stepped out, leaving us in the sacred stillness of reunion. I walked in slowly. My eyes met hers. Those same eyes from the photograph that had changed everything. She looked at me with cautious curiosity. Clara turned to her gently and said, "This is Alexander. He is your..."
She paused.
There was no need to finish.
Because the girl. She just smiled. Softly. Knowingly. And reached out her hand.
I dropped to my knees beside the bed. Took her small fingers in mine.
And I wept.
I wept not just for the miracle before me, but for the years I lost, the pain Clara endured, and the love we were all just beginning to understand.
Lucas stepped forward. She looked at him, tilted her head, then smiled again.
I remember you.
His mouth dropped open. He blinked away tears.
You called me Lukey.
She laughed.
Because you hated it. The room erupted in quiet laughter. We stayed there for what felt like hours.
No rush. No noise. Just healing.
Later, we learned the full truth.
A paperwork error.
A misidentified patient during a chaotic emergency transfer. Our girl had survived. Fought through the odds in a different facility. Under a different name. Foster care had raised her. But her heart had never let go of the people she loved.
She kept the sunflower dress.
Even if it no longer fit. She kept the name Clara taught her. Even when others tried to change it. She kept the memory of a boy who brought her crayons when her hands were too tired to hold a spoon.
And she kept hope.
Through every cold night. Every lonely day.
And now, she was home. Not in a mansion. Not in marble halls.
But in arms that had ached for her. In a family stitched together by fate, love, and redemption. And this is what I learned. Success means nothing if it leaves love behind. Wealth means nothing if your heart is bankrupt.
And time is precious.
Spend it wisely. Spend it with those who matter. Because healing does not come from money.
It comes from meaning. Clara taught me that. Her strength. Her sacrifice.
Her unwavering belief that even shattered lives can still hold beauty.
Our daughter, my daughter,
taught me that some miracles wear pain like armor. And some prayers take years to answer.
But when they do,
they return with fire and grace.
Today, we live as a family. A new chapter. A second chance.
The kind you do not waste.
The kind you live for.
Moral of the story. Sometimes the people who suffer in silence are carrying the most extraordinary strength. Sometimes, the ones we overlook are the ones holding our destiny in their hearts. Never underestimate the power of love, the weight of sacrifice, and the miracle of second chances. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it moved you, share it, comment below, and let someone know. You are never alone.